It in my bones that I would mess something up. Well, the nightly news, PayPal, World War III, and the end of the world. For those of you who are watching later or now, super excited just to try some different things out because I've never tried any of these things out. And it's fascinating to me how all this technology works. I usually have people that do this for me. Let me see what happens if I write this. It's so weird. That's fun. Okay. So, jumping right in, usually there's a video that just goes live at 8:30, and instead of that, we're just going live to talk about PayPal, to talk about World War III and the end of the world. This is the nightly news. My name is Ryan. I'm the Wandering Pastor, and let's jump right into this. I love the news sound bit. Makes me laugh so hard. Makes me laugh so hard. Why do I love this? First story of the day. This story is a jam. PayPal tells its users it will fine them $2,500 for misinformation. Now, what's fascinating about this story to me is that this story is broken by a site called The Daily Wire, which is a conservative news site, very conservative, run by Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Boring, known as the God King. And what's interesting about this particular story is that it comes out, you know, those user agreements that we all ignore, those user agreements, those ones, they had in the fine print that PayPal will fine users $2,500 for misinformation, and it backfires immediately. This is reported from fortune.com, which is a news site about money. And in this particular article, PayPal quickly apologized. You guys apologized over the weekend for what it called confusion, claiming it was all just an error, but not before a deluge of criticism from a number of high-profile individuals, including its own former president, David Marcus. Marcus took to Twitter, the former president, saying, "It is hard for me to openly criticize a company I used to love and gave so much to, but PayPal's new AUP goes against everything I believe in. A private company now gets to decide to take your money if you say something they disagree with. Insanity." Is it insanity? That's the real question. I don't think it's insanity. And Elon Musk, of course, agreed. Free speech advocates like Elon Musk, one of the entrepreneurs behind the founding of PayPal, as well as prominent conservative voices such as actor Kevin Sorbo, likewise blasted the plans. Look, it shouldn't just be conservatives that blast this. If any company says in the finance world, if you say something that is disagreeable to us, then we are going to ban you. That is outright shady, should not be done. 10 out of 10 would not recommend. And here's the funniest part about this article. This came out yesterday. It's when the news broke. And then today, PayPal stock plummets after Daily Wire reports exposes shocking misinformation policy. The stock, it's dropped 5% early in the morning. I checked it right before the report tonight, the nightly news, and it has dropped over 6%. And here's why this is so comical to me, you guys. Here's why this is so good. Oh, Nancy, hey, good to see you here. Can you do me a favor? Oh, look, it showed up. Nancy, you're the first one. I put on the stream, so anyone that types things, it'll pop up now, and I love that. I'm just tinkering with things as I'm learning how to do this. Like I said, it's brand new to me, but I thought it'd be more fun to have like a community engaging in the nightly news and trying to build that. It is fun to post a video and then see people that watch it and what type of people watch it, but this is fun to me because you guys can interact as you see fit. Anyways, jumping back into this, the reason why this story is so incredible to me is really because of this. This is Revelation 13. This is talking about the second beast, and it's talking about what happens at the end times. So in the end times, verse 16, right here, you see the beast comes and it causes all, both great and small, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast, the number of its name. So there is coming a time, according to the Bible, and that book was written 2,000 years ago, where in order to buy things, literally, in order to buy things, you're going to have the mark of the beast. And people might say, well, how would we get to that point where we have to have the mark of the beast? It's exactly like this. One of the companies that controls one of the primary forms of online payment says, if you say something we disagree with, we charge you $2,500. And you may think, well, how do we get from $2,500 to then a mark? And depending on how you interpret Revelation, it can be very different. It's the mark of the beast. Some people think will be a physical mark or a microchip on your hand or your forehead. From my interpretation, the mark really comes down to the thing that you give your allegiance to, the thing that you put your hand to work toward or you set your mind upon. The Jewish people would carry a phylactery on their wrist and their forehead, and still do to this day, carrying the Shema, Deuteronomy 6:4, Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. And they put that literally on their head and on their hand as a symbol of saying, God is my first thing. And in the Bible, it's definitely money is the first thing. So, sorry, Nancy. I'm trying to interact with the chat as well. Yes, something went wrong with the initial countdown. I'm learning all this, but I'm glad that you went out and came back on. I restarted it right at 8:30. And Millie, good to see you. I like the format. It's fun to see the comments. I'm sort of like looking. I don't know. I do see. So Facebook on my screen. I have Facebook and then YouTube comments. That's great. I love that. So anyway, that's the story that I thought was so interesting because it relates directly to the end of the world. And we just finished teaching through Revelation at the chapel a few weeks back, so it was fresh on my mind. And this idea of the mark of the beast, a lot of people think it's going to be a literal 666 or 666 on the right hand. One of the things we have to remember is that the book of Revelation is full of these pictures and images, and the number 666 specifically is important because 3 was the number of perfection, 7 was the number for completion. So 666 is literally meaning perfectly incomplete, because 7 was completion, 3 was perfect. And this number of the beast, it's like a perfect incomplete thing. It's never going to feel like to add up to what God is, who God is. And this mark of the beast is the same. It's going to feel like it should be the right thing, but it's never going to add up. So that's why I don't think it's going to be a literal 666 or a literal tattoo or microchip. Christians are all looking out for those types of things on the horizon. You are right. That would be so obvious, Millie. But what isn't obvious is the slow creep of companies that are banning specifically religious organizations. And the other news story that I had queued up for this evening is are big banks chasing away religious organizations? And I can only tell you from this article and from personal experience, yes. At the chapel where I pastor, we used PayPal for a number of years. And then one day, it just said we're no longer going to receive donations on behalf of the chapel organization. And we petitioned, we wrote to them, we said, can you tell us why? And they said, you broke our guidelines, our conduct guidelines. And I was like, what? And in what way did we do that? We hadn't posted anything that went against any of the guidelines that we could find. And they never got back to us to tell us why we actually had our service suspended with PayPal. We ended up having to refund some money that we had in PayPal to the people who had donated it, and we switched away from them. And since then, I honestly have not used PayPal, but this is an article from thechristianpost.com, and this just came out October 10th, 2022. And it's talking about how there have been these cases where banks, the big banks, Chase, JP Morgan, etc., have essentially persecuted these religious organizations or organizations that say things that they disagree with and said, we are no longer going to offer you our financial services. This is, to me, how we slide down that place to the end times. And we finally will arrive at the moment where, unfortunately, we are at the end. And we hear all these things right now. And something I want to remind all of us of, and I have to remind myself of, is that these news sites, the Christian Post included, Google News especially, PayPal, Fortune, Daily Wire, all of them, they all write news to make money. This is what is happening, either to make money or to control and shape the culture as they see fit, as they seem, as they would deem most appropriate. And what worries me is that we're so polarized, and so many of us, including myself, we read these headlines and you want to jump to the conclusion that feeds the story that's in your mind, the dominant story, not remembering that all of these companies are trying to make money. That's what they're after. It's what they write their stories for. It's why they craft their headlines with precision. They literally spend thousands of dollars on people who can create headlines that will get clicks. And the reason why, for example, we have these news sites that are politically left or politically right, and it's so clear to see which side is which, is because if you can feed one base headlines that they continue to click on, then of course it makes sense that they're going to keep clicking on those stories, and they're going to keep writing stories to get those people to keep on clicking so they can keep on getting the ad dollars. All I'm telling you is that from my experience, these two stories fit together. PayPal, obviously, like I mentioned, they really messed over the chapel, and it was like 4 months of just going back and forth trying to get the money out, realizing we weren't going to. So I quit PayPal personally, professionally, in every way. And I do have a PayPal, I think, probably floating around out there, but I don't advertise it. I don't use it. I don't use Venmo, which is owned by PayPal. And then as far as the big banks go, I'm always keeping my eye on the horizon for the one world government. There's something called the World Economic Forum. They are people who control what the banks are doing globally. If you are following the news, there's also the OPEC association. Essentially, they're the people that control oil. They all just got together this past week and they said, we are going to stop producing oil to make it more scarce so that the price of oil can go up. And these are people in the world that are just deciding, let's make the price of oil go up, or let's take these currencies and use them here. So we are so much closer to what the Bible talks about when it talks about and implies this one world government. It's something we need to pay attention to. It's definitely something we need to focus on and not just let it go by. Part of the reason why I love the nightly news is because I'm here, and as this goes on with my videos that I pre-record, I can add a little bit more mockery. I'll try to continue the mockery. And it's not that I think mockery is good in the general sense, but I love when Elijah in the Old Testament mocks the gods of Baal when he's facing off against the prophets of Baal. He just mocks these prophets. They're trying to call down power from the God of Baal, and Elijah's there, and he says, maybe your God's taking a leak. Maybe he's taking a nap. Maybe he's relieving himself in the restroom. So I take that as the green light. God gives me the green light to just openly mock these clowns who apparently have never read the Bible. Like people who are moving toward the one world government, people who are moving toward a type of institution that would control all of the monetary policy around the globe, and to have no wherewithal to say, are there any religious organizations, are there any faith groups that are going to see this as subversive or as something that goes against their faith? Christianity is the largest religion in the world. And many of us, not all of us, but many of us read the Bible. And it becomes very clear when the world is telling us to do something that goes directly against the Bible. And I won't stand for it. If it comes to the point where we can't use any financial service, we'll use no financial service. We'll do nothing. I'll grow my own food. I'll figure out another way. We'll get rid of the property because it's not worth it to me to sell my soul just a little bit. And I want to make sure that I'm erring on the side of caution. Just like the Jewish people missed the first coming of Christ, I don't want to be caught up in a religious group of people who make excuses for how the world is changing and not be aware of the fact that some of these prophecies are coming to pass right before our eyes. So that's what I am looking at tonight for the nightly news. Those particular things, and also the one that's on my radar for you guys to pay attention to think about. You'll hear a lot of buzz about nuclear war, nuclear weapons in the news today. It's all over Google News. It's on most of the mainstream news because Biden said we are closer to a nuclear tension than we have been since the Cuban Missile Crisis, which is scary. But you have to remember, what month is it? It's October, which means the elections are next month, literally in just a handful of weeks here. 3 weeks, essentially, the elections are popping up. You have to remember that the news cycle is guided heavily by money and by elections because people want to elect people into places of power so that they can make more money, so that they can have more influence with their money. Take all these things with a grain of salt. It is worth praying. I would pray for these three things. I'd pray that, one, there would be peace. The fact that I had read, I don't know how far this has gone down, but that Zelensky was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize is kind of crazy because he's in the middle of a war, and Ukraine is not, it's not my opinion. It's just look through their past 5 years, 10 years. They've had a lot of shady things happen within their government. Not exactly a government that is run on the straight and narrow. So that's interesting. Pray for peace, though. Pray for peace in that particular skirmish, war in Russia and Ukraine. Pray for wisdom. Pray that Christ would take over Putin's heart, that Christ would reign supreme and bring all of the world leaders to repentance. The President of the United States, President Biden, President Zelensky, Putin, the President of the UK, and the leader of Germany as well. All of these people involved. The Bible calls us to pray for our leaders. So I'm just going to say, let's pray for all of them for peace. And then also just to keep in mind that as this payment stuff changes, as the culture changes, I was talking with someone just this past week about slavery, interestingly enough. They were saying, I don't know how anybody could have endorsed slavery, because the founding fathers had slaves, and they were asking me all these questions. What do you think about this? Like, can you believe that they had slaves? And I replied just very simply. I said, here's the easiest way to tell if you would have had slaves to this person, because we can look back in history and think, well, I wouldn't have done that. I would have stood up. But one of the tests that I use with people is that if you're going with everything the culture tells you today, if you believe what the culture tells you to believe today, if you look at the culture, the mainstream culture, what the news is telling you, what the media is telling you, the songs, the movies, the music, etc., all of that, whatever they're saying is right and wrong. If you agree with all of what they're saying, then you probably would have been a slave owner. That's just the reality, because that's what was happening back then. That was the norm. People just listened and looked around at what their neighbors were doing and listened to and believed, and they said, well, they're all doing it, so I'll do it. So if you're one of the people today, as this culture shifts and we have these different perspectives on gender ideology and what is right and wrong, and you for the most part believe most of what the culture around you says, it's worth asking yourself the question, man, am I on the right side of history? See, we have this sort of modern ego, which says we're the newest culture, so we must know what is right. I'd much rather stake my life on the Word of God that has been around for thousands of years, and people have tried to destroy it actively for thousands of years, and it still stands today. I believe that the gospel of Jesus will stand the test of time. It has for thousands of years, 2,000 years for the New Testament, multiple thousands more prior to that with the Old Testament that were pointing to Jesus. So all of that to say, when PayPal says it's going to fine you $2,500, but then they were just kidding, it was a mistake, don't believe it. If you believe that, you have gone down the wrong matrix hole. You have bit down on the pill of absolute lies. A multi-billion-dollar company does not put something in their agreement only to say, just kidding, there was some confusion, we made a mistake. There is no confusion, not at all. There are companies, there are financial institutions and banks that will be fining people, that will be penalizing people for having views that differ from their own. These are private companies, and they will bring the hammer down. This time, they got backlash, and the backlash was in the form of a stock dip of 6.27%. next time, maybe in 5 years, 10 years, 1 year, it won't be something that's noticeable. And they will keep it in the agreements. And they will look at you just like they've looked at other people that I disagree with. Alex Jones, Milo Yiannopoulos, those were the first ones. And then recently we've got people like the internet sensation Andrew Tate and Kanye West now getting banned from Facebook, getting banned from Twitter, from Instagram. And you think, well, that's because they're out there. It's because they're famous. Yeah. Do you think it just starts there and ends there? No. It starts with the people of influence. And once the people of influence have been silenced, they'll silence whoever else they want to silence. They can silence me, and we'll go right over to Rumble, because apparently that's the thing to do. Anyways, I hope you guys are staying strong. I hope you're praying. I hope you're preparing. And I hope you're using wisdom on how to bring the love of Christ to people in the midst of a generation, in the midst of a culture that definitely looks at the values of Jesus and says, not for us. It doesn't mean we don't get to share it. So I encourage you to share it. I encourage you to be strong, and I encourage you to think critically about the world around us, to not just let things pass you by and say that's for someone else to ponder. Because PayPal, it's right there in most of our phones. Venmoing people, buying something on eBay. So think about it, because it's coming soon to a town near you, and the Bible has some things to say about it. I hope you guys are blessed. I am appreciative of you who jumped on tonight. I love this whole thing here. I don't have a moderator, so at some point, some teenager's going to jump on here and write some horrendous things in the chat, because we have the chat right up on the screen, which I love that, but I'm glad to see here. It's good to see you. I saw Skip out here. Glad that you were able to make it by, Skip. Lou, and of course, Millie, Nancy, you two are my jam, and I believe Annette is on here as well. I love y'all, and we're going to try this again for a couple nights, and what I might do is just change my schedule up, where I'll do a couple nights live a week, and then I'll post some videos that are more researched and intensive, but I like having the comments. I like the ability to interact, so let's just keep doing this. Let's give it a try. We'll be live tomorrow night, and then on Wednesday and Thursday, we'll do pre-recorded videos that I will let loose at 8:30 at night, and that's only because my wife is flying out of town for a funeral, so please pray for her and my mother-in-law. They're heading up north for a family member that passed away. Love y'all. Grace and peace. See you soon.